Hey everybody, we're coming to you today from the Barber Library at COCC, and we are going to be talking about labor economics, and we're going to do just a really short video to discuss sort of labor, unions, and minimum wage, and then we'll come back and we'll do a second short one on something called the marginal product of labor. So what you can see in front of you here is just a very simple supply and demand graph. We've added an L here because it's the supply and demand for labor. And if you notice, the price, which is always price and quantity, the price has become the wage because that is the price of employing labor, or the price of hiring labor is the wage. And so it behaves just like a supply and demand graph that you guys all know very well by now. But there's a slight difference. Now, the demand for labor is going to be coming from the businesses, and the supply of labor is going to be coming from the population. So, us as workers, right? So everything in a way is flipped upside down, right? The demand is coming from the businesses. Before, on a normal supply and demand graph for goods and services, it's really the supply that represents the businesses, and the consumers represent the demand. Now everything's flipped. So in a normal situation, what we have here is we have an equilibrium wage, and we have an equilibrium quantity of people that are working, and this could be the market for doctors, it could be the market for lawyers, it could be the market for janitors, it could be the market for fast food workers, whatever you want. Okay, and so ask yourself, how is the minimum wage going to work with this new supply and demand graph? Well, the minimum wage, you should ask yourself, is it going to be a price floor, a price ceiling? What is it that the minimum wage does? Well, the minimum wage stops something from dropping lower, right? It's a minimum. So the employment wage rate in the state of Oregon is a certain amount. Nationally, it's a certain amount, and you cannot go below that. So that means that it is a price floor, right? So the price floor is a minimum wage, okay? And if you review with yourself what happens, should you expect a shortage or a surplus of workers here? Here we have the quantity supplied at that minimum wage. Now it's higher than the equilibrium wage, theoretically. So you should expect that more people want to work for that minimum wage. And there's a lot of discussion around the country now about a $12 or a $15 minimum wage. And in theory, for doing a job that used to be getting paid, $10, there should be a lot more people lining up to work at that $15 an hour wage. And the quantity demanded that the businesses are asking for at that higher wage is going to be less. And so this should, according to the model, create a surplus of workers, right? And this is where you get the arguments from many business people about the minimum wage and many economists, and they say that it should increase unemployment when you raise the minimum wage because of this general model. Now you're going to explore in this module some different studies and some different information that shows that may not be the case in every situation, but the model says that you should expect some increase in unemployment. Also, that's not necessarily a reason not to do it. If the benefit to the people that get the increased wage it is more beneficial than a small increase in unemployment, then maybe it's still worthy of doing. And of course, you need to recognize that the minimum wage has been a historical positive for most industrialized countries, their implementation of the minimum wage. So that is basically how the supply and demand for labor works. I want to throw one more thing at you since we're studying labor economics. What is it that unions do? How do unions interact with this supply and demand of labor? Again, we have the wage and the quantity of labor. So, do unions fight for better wages? Yes, but how do they do it? Do they impose a minimum wage on the firms? Not necessarily. They can potentially by creating a price floor that's higher maybe than the equilibrium wage through negotiation or fighting. But sometimes what they do is they actually create a decrease in supply. Okay, and they raise the wages that way. If you think about an electrician's union or a plumbing union or an industrialized workers union or in New York, a theater company union. What they're doing is you have to have been accepted in the union, you have to pass some certain exams, you have to pay some fees, and so it limits the supply of workers. And in essence, by doing that, raises the wage that they can charge, right? From that wage to that wage, okay? By limiting supply. So again, just a quick video to show you how the supply and demand of labor works, and we're going to come back in just a second and talk about the marginal product of labor and how that works into the establishment of a wage. Okay.